Russia's invasion of Ukraine, which is the biggest war in Europe since World War II, seemed to be the final signal that the era of post-Cold War strategic tranquility was over. Great power competition was heating up again, with China, Russia, and their allies eager to make a bid to change the US-led international order. The new strategic rivalry between the democratically-aligned US powers and the authoritarian-aligned China-led powers formally flared to life on February 24, 2022. This great new power competition has taken to all domains: land, sea, cyberspace, and the skies, where both sides will strive to build new weapon systems to achieve supremacy. What is the future of air power in this era of emerging competition? Forget about fifth-generation fighter jets. Today we'll go a step further and look at programs around the world to develop a sixth-generation fighter. No nation has ever won a modern conflict without achieving air superiority. Air superiority is defined as having the ability to conduct air operations without prohibitive interference from the opposing air force. The next step up is air supremacy, where the opposing air force is incapable of effective interference. Without at least air superiority, the cost of ground operations quickly rises. The United States proved the concept of air supremacy in the Gulf War and has operated with its lessons in mind to this day. For decades, achieving and maintaining air supremacy has been the United States military's top priority in combat operations, and it has invested heavily in state-of-the-art fifth-generation fighter jets, the F-22 Raptor and the F-35 Lightning II, to ensure it would maintain this ability. Both of these programs were expensive. The F-35 program in particular came years behind schedule and many millions of dollars over budget, but for the United States, the expense was worth it, as the new aircraft easily exceeded all others in the world in capability. However, China and Russia have since responded with fifth-generation fighters of their own, the Chengdu J-20 Mighty Dragon and the Su-57 Felon, respectively. China could have a fleet of 1,000 J-20 aircraft by 2030 if current production rates continue. Russia, meanwhile, plans to have 22 Su-57 fighters by late 2024 and 76 by 2028, although international sanctions may interfere with those plans. The United States, meanwhile, has only 187 F-22 Raptors in service, and not all of them are combat-ready. It plans to supplement this force with over 2,400 F-35s, over 975 of which have been delivered, although not all of these are operational. The United States has a disadvantage, however. Since it has global responsibilities, it needs to divide its forces, where China can concentrate all of its air power, led by the J-20, in the skies around the first island chain. The J-20 has recently gotten improved engines, making it a more formidable force to be reckoned with in America's planning. China also has longer-range air-to-air missiles than the United States currently does. These missiles and the deployment of advanced AESA radars on at least some of its planes challenge America's traditional air dominance in ways not seen since the Cold War. Although aviation experts tend to consider China and Russia's fifth-generation fighters inferior to the F-22 and F-35, Beijing and Moscow do not intend to stop there, and the United States is taking the threat seriously enough to begin development of its sixth-generation fighter program. And American, Chinese, and Russian programs aren't the only ones. With the stakes of 21st century world politics getting higher, other countries cannot afford to leave the playing field. What would make a sixth-generation fighter different from a fifth-generation one? For example, fifth-generation fighters demarcated themselves from the fourth generation by boasting a combination of stealth, speed, and high maneuverability. This would carry over into the sixth generation, but would not necessarily distinguish it from the fifth generation. Since no sixth-generation aircraft has yet been produced, the concept is still not set in stone. One likely defining feature of a sixth-generation fighter would be its smart status and its integration into the information warfare network. Sixth-generation fighters would likely boast advanced artificial intelligence to help it sift through the piles of information they would receive from both their own onboard sensors and those of friendly units in all the other domains of the war. However, artificial intelligence would not be limited to the information war. The prototypical sixth-generation fighters would have the ability to fly as either manned planes or as drones, and to integrate the two together. For example, a formation of sixth-generation planes could be led by one manned fighter, while the rest of the planes in the units would be drones. Not all of the 6th generation fighter programs are following this precise layout, but all of them should be able to fly remote control. It's safe to say that all 6th generation fighter jets would get rid of the traditional dashboard displays and replace them with cockpit systems information fed directly into a pilot's helmet. 6th generation aircraft would not only have smart command and control systems, the engines would be smart too. For example, in the United States, GE is testing an engine called the XA100. This engine is called an adaptive engine, capable of going into a high thrust, maximum power mode when needed, and a high-efficiency fuel-saving mode during duller periods. GE claims the adaptive engine will improve thrust by 10% and fuel efficiency by 25%, while providing better heat dissipation than current systems do. GE initiated its test of this engine in December 2020 and successfully completed that work in May 2021. The tests came as part of USAF's Next Generation Air Dominance (NGAD) program. 6th generation aircraft will also want to improve on the range of their 5th generation predecessors. Networking with other assets is a critical part of this process to ensure that stealth is maintained. Once you attack, you give yourself away. 6th generation fighters will want to delay this process as long as possible, attack from a very long distance, and then return to safety. This is why working with drones in real time will be so important. 6th generation fighters will also have higher payload capacities than their 5th generation predecessors. They might even be able to use laser weapons. For example, the United States plans to arm the product of its NGAD program with a laser called the Self-Protect High Energy Laser Demonstrator, SHIELD. The SHIELD would be a pod-mounted system. The SHIELD would be ideal for countering incoming enemy missiles targeting either the plane or other assets. The lasers would also have offensive capabilities. There's even an existing patent for this device that can create what's called a laser-induced plasma filament, which would act as a decoy for enemy missiles. Think of it as an extremely high-tech upgrade to the chaff and flare systems currently deployed. Which countries are currently researching 6th generation fighter aircraft? We'll begin with what might be a surprising place, India, with its Advanced Medium Combat Aircraft (AMCA). This fighter, manufactured by the country's Hindustan Aeronautics Limited (HAL) company, would be something of a transition between the 5th and 6th generation of jet fighter planes. If all goes according to plan, it will be a 5th generation platform that demonstrates some 6th generation capabilities. The AMCA will have versions suitable for both the Indian Air Force and Navy, and the IAF plans to purchase up to 125 of them. The AMCA is designed to be a single-seat, twin-engine stealth and multi-role aircraft. It will have supercruise capacity and can be operated as a drone plane, a feature of the 6th generation. The AMCA's first flight is scheduled for 2027, with full production beginning in 2029. There are skeptics, however, since India's domestic defense industry is still embryonic, and it might not possess the know-how to make a true stealth fighter, meaning that the AMCA would not even qualify as 5th generation, let alone 6th. However, with India seeing increased tensions with China over a border dispute that became violent in 2020, the AMCA might be good enough for its needs, and the springboard for it to launch a more successful aircraft even if this one does not deliver on all of its promises. We'll now turn to the most obvious country to develop a 6th generation fighter, the United States, which currently leads the field. The United States has two 6th generation fighter programs in place. The first is the now familiar NGAD for the Air Force, which is tasked with producing an aircraft that will succeed the F-22 Raptor. The first prototype NGAD had its maiden flight in 2020. Lockheed Martin and Boeing are the two major competitors, with the winner to be announced in 2024. Given the troubles that plagued the F-22 and F-35 programs, the Pentagon is being much more careful with the NGAD. For starters, the Defense Department is seeking to retain the intellectual property involved in the NGAD from the start, to prevent the disputes seen in the F-35 program and better integrate new technologies developed by other companies. The NGAD will be more maneuverable than the F-35 and have improved information warfare abilities compared to the F-22. The NGAD fighter will also have a greater internal weapons capacity than the F-22, and while its primary mission will be based on attaining air superiority, it will also have ground attack capabilities, especially with regards to enemy air defense systems. Penetrating the best air defense systems in the world will be a key mission for the NGAD. Among the NGAD's other features will be its ability to link with up to 6 collaborative combat aircraft drones, which are also under development. The Air Force plans for these drones to have both defensive and offensive abilities. Defensively, they should be able to protect the NGAD by taking incoming fire and giving themselves away via sensing or electronic warfare, leaving the primary plane invisible to radar. Offensively, they will carry their own weapons. The NGAD will be designed for traditional runway takeoff. The Air Force is planning to purchase between 200 and 250 of the final NGAD fighter, along with 1,000 of the associated drones. The program's price will be high, possibly as high as $300 million for each NGAD, but experts expect it to be less than the F-22's operational costs. The drone wingmen will be much cheaper. The Air Force will only operate one NGAD, one sixth-generation fighter. There will not be multiple types in the same generation. The NGAD fighter is scheduled to become operational in the 2030s and will be designed to be adaptable to emerging technologies. The Navy's sixth-generation fighter program is called the F/A-XX. The final product is intended to replace the F/A-18 Super Hornet. The plane will be an aircraft carrier-based one, capable of takeoff and landing on the United States Navy's Nimitz and Gerald R. Ford-class vessels. The Navy may want its sixth-generation aircraft to be a twin-seated variety like the Super Hornet, although this is not yet known for certain. The Navy will be prioritizing operational reach and capacity, which includes systems designed to deal with threats at long ranges, such as ship-killing missiles. At the end of August 2023, the Navy announced that the F/A-XX's concept had been refined, and it was now moving into the design maturation phase. Boeing, Lockheed Martin, and Northrop Grumman are competing to manufacture the airframe, while GE Aerospace and Pratt & Whitney are competing to build the engine. The F/A-XX is currently the Pentagon's fourth biggest research and development program, with $11.5 billion requested for it between fiscal years 2023 to 2027. Other nations have pulled their resources together to develop a sixth-generation fighter. One of these is the Global Air Combat Program, GCAP, and it's a joint venture between the United Kingdom, Italy, Sweden, and Japan. Japan got into the sixth-generation fighter game with its Mitsubishi FX. It decided to skip developing a fifth-generation fighter and went right to the sixth generation when the United States Congress made a law in 1997 that prohibited the sale of the F-22 to any foreign nation. Even with its entry into the Global Air Combat Program, Japan intends to build the Mitsubishi FX mostly on its own, and with a relatively modest $48 billion price tag. Considering that Japan has not built a fighter jet of its own for 40 years, this would be a great achievement for its defense industry, although it is relying on foreign firms with more experience, such as Lockheed Martin, Boeing, and Britain's BAE Systems for technical help. Meanwhile, Rolls-Royce will manufacture the plane's engines. So far, Japan's tests of stealth features like radar-absorbent materials and engine inlets seem promising, far more so than India's program. The engines will also have a serpentine air intake to further reduce visibility and heat signature. The FX will be a smart plane that will be able to share data with allied aircraft, such as American F-22s and F-35s, and presumably the NGAD and F/A-XX, to make the most of joint operations. These systems will also come with AI and drone companions, which are being developed alongside the plane itself. The FX is said to be able to control up to 3 drone companions. The Tempest is Britain's contribution to the GCAP, with Japan, Italy, and Sweden later joining. BAE Systems will be the airframe manufacturer, Rolls-Royce will develop the engines, and the Italian aerospace company Leonardo will create the avionic and electronic systems. The Tempest will be a multi-role fighter that can fly as a manned unit or a drone, and it will be able to direct multiple drones. The AI is slated to be particularly advanced, with a deep learning capability, adapting to the lessons learned in every mission. In one of the more eerie plans for the Tempest that will make some science fiction aficionados shiver, the Tempest's AI will monitor the pilot's physical and mental state via helmet sensors and, if need be, automatically take over certain functions. It will also prioritize information, presenting what it thinks is the most important priorities to the human operator. The result is that it should be able to handle 10,000 times more data than existing systems. Laser weapons will also be part of the fighter's capabilities, for both offensive and possibly defensive purposes. The Tempest's designers hope to include modularity in the design, the ability to adapt to completely different missions. Although modularity is always a danger, the F-35 suffered numerous delays and cost overruns because of the plane's need to serve several types of missions from one basic design. and it's unknown if the Tempest will have multiple variations. The United States Navy experienced an even worse disaster with its pursuit of modularity via the Littoral Combat Ship program. It remains to be seen if the Tempest will suffer in the same way by shooting for this goal. To further enhance its stealth capabilities, the Tempest will have delta wings. In 2023, the Tempest began testing its ejection seats. Plans are to have the plane fly by 2027 and enter service in 2035. France, Germany, and Spain are jointly cooperating on a sixth-generation fighter. Belgium also joined the program as an observer. The program, the Future Air Combat System, began in 2017 and is slated to replace the Typhoon and Rafale. The program features sixth-generation characteristics like drone integration and sensor fusion, such as access to satellite-based imagery in near real time. One of the trickier challenges for the FCAS program is to build a version capable of landing on France's Charles de Gaulle aircraft carrier, since the fighter is expected to weigh 33 tons compared to the Rafale's 27. Still, things are progressing. In December 2022, France, Germany, and Spain awarded contracts to create a flying prototype fighter. Dassault will be the prime contractor, while Airbus will be the main partner for Germany and Spain. In-flight demonstrations are expected in either 2028 or 2029, and the aircraft is expected to enter service by 2040. Russia's bid for a sixth-generation fighter comes with its MiG-41 program. Russia announced this program in 2018 as a replacement for the fourth-generation MiG-31. Russia is emphasizing speed in its sixth-generation fighter development, as the MiG-31 was originally designed to cruise at Mach 2.3 and reach a Mach 2.8 maximum speed to intercept the American SR-71 spy plane and American bombers. This is not a speed that Russia's fifth-generation Su-57 is capable of. According to the Kremlin, the MiG-41 might be able to achieve a cruising speed of Mach 4, which would make it the fastest military aircraft in the world. That sounds amazing, but it poses many problems. Enormous friction is generated when flying at supersonic speeds. This friction erodes stealth coating materials and creates an enormous heat signature, so the plane would be highly visible at such velocities. Building an aircraft capable of achieving these speeds while maintaining stealth would be a tall engineering order indeed for Russian engineers to overcome. The Russians intend the MiG-41 to have a high ceiling too, exceeding the SR-71's 85,000 feet, and it will supposedly come with anti-satellite missiles. The Russians say the aircraft will have its first flight in 2025 and be delivered by 2028. However, given Russia's difficulty in fielding a proper fifth-generation fighter, to say nothing of the sanctions on it, we should all take these claims with a heavy grain of salt. All we can know for sure is that Russia is interested in developing a sixth-generation fighter. Finally, China is developing its own sixth-generation fighter, the JXX. As China is one of only 3 countries to create a fifth-generation fighter, and only the second to field such a plane in large numbers, one would expect that its entry into the sixth-generation game would put it in position to exceed most of its rivals. This does not appear to be the case. Little is known about the plane except for a diamond-shaped model aircraft with no tail that resembled American designs. China's sixth-generation fighter development could hit another snag. The United States has put export controls on advanced computer chips to China. These export controls are designed to limit China's ability to compete in the AI field. Given that China's aerospace industry does not innovate much on its own and is heavily dependent on stealing trade secrets from the West, the country faces a serious challenge in successfully creating a proper sixth-generation fighter. We'll need to wait and see the results. Either way, the race to dominate the skies in the sixth generation will be more important than it was during the fifth generation. The F-22 and F-35 programs saw their genesis and rollout during the height of America's power, the so-called unipolar moment. Now things are much different. With China emerging as a potential peer rival of the United States, America cannot lose its dominance of the skies. For its part, China can no longer allow the United States to have uncontested dominance of the skies if it wants to serve its interests. Meanwhile, Chinese plans for the Indo-Pacific region severely threaten Japan and India, so the demand for a sixth-generation fighter is much more acute than the demand for a fifth-generation fighter was. Across the Eurasian landmass, Russia is growing more restless, and with America's attention primarily focused on the Indo-Pacific, European nations know they will need to have their own capability of maintaining air superiority to defend themselves. The race for air dominance in the 21st century may feature dazzling new technologies, but in substance it's the same as it was when nations first fought in the skies in World War I. Even back then, with inefficient but frightening German Zeppelin raids on London, it became clear that whoever controlled the skies would control the fate of everything beneath them. The technologies involved in that race change a lot over time, but the reason for the race never does. Which country do you think has the best 6th-generation fighter program? Who do you expect will field the best aircraft? Who will control the skies in the 21st century? Don't forget to let us know in the comments, and also be sure to hit the like button and subscribe for more military analysis from military experts.